I never thought I'd witness a grown woman screaming at the top of her lungs, standing in my backyard like a wild animal. But there she was, Karen, in all her entitled glory. Her face was beet red, her fists clenched, and her voice screeched like nails on a chalkboard. You have no right, and no right to deny my family access to your pool. I will call the police. She was shaking, practically foaming at the mouth, her two kids behind her crying for no reason. Her husband, a tall, defeated-looking man, stood awkwardly at the gate, probably questioning every life decision that led him to this moment. I gripped the poolside railing, trying to keep my voice even. Karen, this is MY property. My private pool. You're not invited. Now, please leave. The moment those words left my mouth, all hell broke loose. With a shrill shriek, Karen lunged forward, grabbing my pool gate with both hands and rattling it so hard it sounded like it would break off its hinges. I swear to God, you selfish piece of... And then, bang, a loud crash erupted through the neighborhood. Something had gone terribly, terribly wrong. Earlier that week, I had always loved my house. A peaceful, quiet home in a suburban neighborhood. My backyard was my paradise. The highlight? My brand new, custom-built swimming pool. It wasn't just any pool. It was a luxurious in-ground setup with a waterfall, LED lights that change colors at night, and a built-in jacuzzi. It was my dream. I worked hard to afford it, and I was excited to enjoy it without the chaos of public pools. But unfortunately, I had a neighbor, a Karen. At first, I didn't think much of her. Just another entitled mom with a sharp haircut and a superiority complex. But after moving in, I quickly learned that Karen didn't believe in boundaries. She was the type to walk into someone's yard without permission. The type to lecture people on how to take care of their own property. And the worst part? She acted like the entire neighborhood belonged to her. When she first saw my pool, I could tell. Her eyes lit up like a vulture spotting fresh meat. "Oh my gosh, what a beautiful pool," she gasped, standing by my fence. "My kids are going to love swimming in it this summer." I laughed awkwardly, thinking she was joking. "Oh, yeah, I bet they'll love the community pool, too." Her smile twitched. "No, silly. Your pool. I mean, come on, we're neighbors. Sharing is caring, right?" I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. It never came. Instead, she flashed a smile so sweet it gave me cavities and continued. "Since your house is right next to ours, it just makes sense. My kids get bored in the summer, and a pool is exactly what they need." I forced a polite smile. "Karen, oh, don't worry. We'll bring our own towels. It's not like we'll be a bother." I sighed. There was no way I was letting this happen. "Karen, listen. This is my private pool. It's not a community space. I built it for myself, and I'm not comfortable with other people using it." Her face froze, and I swear I saw her soul leave her body for a second. Then, in the most passive-aggressive voice, she said, "Oh, I see. You're one of those neighbors." The first time she trespassed. I thought that was the end of it. I was so wrong. A few days later, I came home from work, exhausted, ready to relax. I walked through my house, kicked off my shoes, and stepped into the backyard. And there they were, Karen's kids, in my pool, splashing, screaming, laughing, like they owned the place. I froze in shock. I wasn't even mad at first, just confused as hell. And then I heard it. "Hey, neighbor." I turned. Karen was lounging in one of MY poolside chairs, sunglasses on, sipping a drink like she was at a resort. I knew you'd be okay with it. The kids needed to cool off, and I figured, why waste a perfectly good pool? I took a deep breath. "Stay calm. Karen, get out of my pool." She sat up, frowning. "Oh, come on. We're not hurting anything. What's the big deal?" I pointed at the kids. "The big deal is that you're trespassing." She huffed, standing up and stomping like a toddler. "You're being so selfish. It's just water." I crossed my arms. "Out. Now." After several more minutes of arguing, she finally gathered her kids and left, but not without calling me a selfish, heartless man-child first. I was furious. So I did the only thing I could. I installed cameras. And thank God I did, because what happened next would shake the entire neighborhood. The day Karen lost her mind. Fast forward to today. Karen had spent days throwing passive-aggressive jabs at me. She glared at me in the street, whispered to other neighbors about how I was so selfish, and even tried to guilt-trip me by saying her kids were devastated. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. I was sitting on my back porch when I heard it. A loud rattling noise. I turned my head, and my blood ran cold. Karen was at my gate, trying to break in. She had both hands wrapped around the metal bars, shaking it violently, screaming like a banshee. "You can't do this. I have a right to this pool." I jumped up, sprinting over. "Karen, are you out of your mind? Let go of my gate." She didn't. Instead, she let out the most deranged screech I had ever heard, and bang! Something snapped. I gasped. My eyes darted to the ground. And that's when I saw it. Karen was on the ground, lying completely still. And then, the police sirens started wailing in the distance. I stood frozen at the gate, my heart hammering in my chest as the distant wail of police sirens grew louder. Karen lay sprawled on the ground, moaning dramatically like she had been hit by a freight train, even though she was the one who tried to break in. "Oh, my back, my neck." She whimpered, peeking at me through one squinted eye like she was preparing for an Oscar nomination. I wanted to roll my eyes, but this was serious. If the police believe her lies, I could be in trouble. I pulled out my phone, flipping to the security camera app one had installed after the first time she trespassed. My hand shook as I scanned the footage. There it was, clear as day. Karen grabbing the gate, shaking it like a madwoman until it snapped. Good. I had proof. Just as I saved the video to my phone, 2 police cars screeched to a stop in front of my driveway. Red and blue lights flashed against the walls, and I swallowed hard as 2 officers stepped out. One was tall and serious, with a buzz cut that screamed no nonsense. The other was shorter, a woman with kind but sharp eyes. Together, they marched toward me while Karen, still on the ground, let out a loud, fake sob. "He hurt me," she wailed, clutching her side like she'd been thrown off a cliff. I blinked. "What? I didn't even touch you." The male officer narrowed his eyes. "Sir, step back from the gate." I raised my hands. "I didn't do anything." She tried to break into my yard. The female officer knelt beside Karen. "Ma'am, did you say he assaulted you?" Karen nodded furiously, tears streaming down her face, which was weird because 5 minutes ago, she was calling me a selfish pig. "Yes, I was just checking on my kids, and he pushed me." I gaped at her. Was she serious? "I have security footage," I said quickly, desperately trying to stay calm. "She's lying. She tried to break into my yard because I wouldn't let her use my pool." Karen let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, right, because I'm the crazy one? I just wanted to make sure my children were safe." Her voice cracked as if she was a poor, innocent mother being bullied by the big bad pool owner. I pulled out my phone, thumbing through the footage as the male officer approached. "Sir, show us the video." I handed it over, my heart thudding so hard I thought it might punch through my ribs. As he played the video, the tension hung thick in the air. Karen shifted uncomfortably, probably realizing her performance was about to flop. And then, the male officer's face changed. His mouth pressed into a thin line. He turned the phone toward his partner. They saw everything. Karen shaking the gate like a lunatic. Her screaming at me. The gate snapping under her own weight. The female officer stood up, brushing dirt off her knee. "Ma'am," she said sternly, "this video tells a different story." Karen's face turned sheet white. I was just protecting my kids," she blurted out. The male officer crossed his arms. "Ma'am, your children aren't even here. And it's clear from this footage that you were trespassing." I exhaled a breath I didn't know I was holding. "Finally, can you please get her off my property?" I asked, trying to sound calm but firm. Karen's mouth flapped open and shut like a fish. "You can't be serious. What about my rights? What about my kids needing a place to swim?" The female officer raised an eyebrow. "Your neighbor's private pool is not a public service, ma'am." I bit back a laugh as Karen's jaw dropped to the floor. But just when I thought the nightmare was over, Karen took it to the next level. The HOA gets involved. The next morning, I woke up feeling relieved. Finally, Karen had been put in her place. Or so I thought. I was halfway through my coffee when I heard a loud knock on the door. Frowning, I opened it, and there stood Mr. Thompson, the head of the HOA. A tall, thin man with a permanent frown and a clipboard glued to his hand. "We need to talk," he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. My stomach sank. I had a bad feeling about this. He flipped open his clipboard, scanning a sheet of paper. "I received a formal complaint about your pool," he said stiffly. "It appears you've been creating hostility with neighbors by denying them access." I almost choked on my coffee. "Wait, what? Are you serious?" He adjusted his glasses. "The HOA bylaws clearly state that any shared community amenities must be available for neighborhood use. Karen insists your pool qualifies." I laughed bitterly. "It's a private pool on MY property. I paid for every brick, every drop of water." He didn't smile. "Be that as it may, we take all complaints seriously. If you refuse reasonable access, there may be consequences." I could feel my blood pressure rising. "What kind of consequences?" He tapped his pen on the clipboard. "Fines, legal action, potential pool removal." I saw red. Karen wasn't just being a pain. She was trying to take my pool away, and I wasn't about to let her win. I clenched my jaw. "This isn't over." Mr. Thompson gave me a curt nod and left, but my mind was already spinning. If Karen wanted a war, she was about to get one. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured Karen floating in my pool, sipping lemonade like she owned the place. The thought alone made my blood boil. By morning, I was ready to fight, but Karen beat me to it. I stepped outside to grab the mail and froze. A massive, neon yellow sign hung on my fence. Bold, black letters screamed, "Community pool, all welcome." And below that, in Karen's loopy handwriting, "Thanks to our generous neighbor. Feel free to swim anytime." I ripped the sign down, my hands shaking. This woman had lost her mind. The worst part? It wasn't just a prank. As I yanked the sign off, 3 kids sprinted past me. One clutching a pool noodle, another dragging a beach towel. Cannonball. One shrieked before diving straight into my pool. I couldn't believe my eyes. Karen had invited the whole neighborhood. I stormed toward her house, fury rising with every step. Before I even knocked, her door swung open. She smiled sweetly, like she hadn't just turned my backyard into a public water park. "Oh, hello," she chirped. "Lovely weather for a swim, isn't it?" I held up the sign. "What is this?" Her smile widened, just spreading a little community spirit. I took a deep breath, failing to stay calm. "Take it down, now, or I'll call the cops again." Karen tilted her head. "Oh, you could, but then I might mention to the HOA that your pool violates setback rules." I froze. Setback rules. The HOA had a bylaw stating pools had to be a certain distance from property lines. When I built mine, it was just barely within the limit. If Karen convinced them otherwise, I could lose everything. She leaned closer, voice dripping with fake concern. "You wouldn't want to upset Mr. Thompson again, would you?" I wanted to scream. Instead, I did the next best thing. I documented everything. I took pictures of the trespassers, the sign, even Karen laughing in her yard. I saved every piece of evidence on my phone. If Karen thought she had me cornered, she was dead wrong. But the next day, she took things too far. The sun was barely up when I heard it, a loud, sloshing sound from my backyard. I threw on some shoes and rushed outside. My pool. The water, cloudy and green. It reeked like rotten eggs and chlorine. Someone had dumped something inside, and I had a pretty good idea who. I grabbed my phone, heart pounding as I pulled up the security app. Fast-forwarding through the night, my stomach dropped when I saw it. Karen. At 2:17 a.m., she crept through the gate with a bucket in each hand. She leaned over my pool and dumped a thick, sludgy substance straight in. I clenched my jaw. This was war. I immediately called the pool company. An hour later, a technician arrived. His face paled when he took one look at the water. This is motor oil," he said grimly. "It's going to be a nightmare to clean." Motor oil. Karen ruined my pool. The technician gave me a rough estimate, over $5,000 to drain, clean, and restore everything. My blood boiled hotter with every passing second. I saved the security footage and called the police. Again, when the officer arrived, I didn't hold back. "She destroyed my property," I said, handing him my phone. "I have everything on camera." He watched the footage, his expression hardening. "This is vandalism. You could press criminal charges." I didn't hesitate. "Do it." Karen crossed the line, and now she was going to pay. An hour later, I stood at my window, watching. 2 officers marched to Karen's door. When she answered, her smug smile disappeared instantly. I couldn't hear their conversation, but when the officers pointed to my house, her face twisted with rage. A few minutes later, they escorted her to the police car. I won't lie, I smiled. Finally, justice. But as the police drove off, I had a sinking feeling. Karen wasn't the type to give up easily. And I was right, because 2 days later, I got a letter in the mail from her lawyer, and the fight was far from over. I tore open the letter, my hands trembling with anger. Karen wasn't backing down. She was doubling down. The bold, black letters at the top read, "Notice of intent to sue." I blinked in disbelief as I scanned the document. Karen, in her infinite pettiness, was suing me for emotional distress and unlawful exclusion from community amenities. I couldn't help but laugh, a sharp, bitter sound. This woman had broken into my yard, vandalized my pool, and now she wanted to paint herself as the victim? But the final line of the letter wiped the smile from my face. Failure to comply with HOA regulations regarding communal facilities may result in legal action and mandatory pool access. Mandatory pool access. Karen wanted a legal right to my private pool. I couldn't let that happen. I grabbed my phone and called my lawyer, Mr. Harris, a no-nonsense guy who had handled a nasty HOA dispute for me years ago. He picked up on the second ring. "She did what?" He barked when I explained the situation. "That's ridiculous. She doesn't have a legal leg to stand on, but we need to move fast." I exhaled shakily. "What's the next step?" "We hit back," he said, his voice hard. "I'll file a cease and desist to stop her harassment. And if she keeps pushing, we'll sue her for vandalism, trespassing, and defamation." I hung up feeling a little better until the HOA got involved. The next day, I received an urgent notice taped to my front door. The HOA, led by Mr. Thompson, had called an emergency meeting to discuss pool access concerns and neighborhood harmony. Translation: Karen had twisted the story in her favor. I arrived at the meeting hall that evening, my heart pounding as I stepped inside. The room buzzed with whispers as neighbors shot me curious glances. Karen sat at the front, smug and polished, like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. She flashed a fake smile when she saw me. Mr. Thompson banged a gavel on the table. "Let's begin," he said. "Mrs. Campbell has raised concerns regarding Mr. Walker's refusal to share his pool, claiming it violates the HOA's spirit of community sharing." I shot to my feet. "It's a private pool, on private property. I paid for it with my own money. Why should I be forced to let everyone use it?" Karen stood, clutching a tissue like she was the victim of some great injustice. "I only wanted a safe place for my children to swim," she said tearfully. "I never meant any harm, but Mr. Walker has been so hostile." "Hostile?" "She dumped motor oil in my pool." I opened my mouth to respond, but Mr. Thompson cut me off. "We've reviewed the HOA bylaws," he said stiffly. "And while your pool is technically private, there's a vague clause about community sharing." I stiffened. "Vague? What does that mean?" His lips thinned. "It means we can request you to open your pool for neighborhood events, within reason." Karen's eyes gleamed with triumph. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "I have proof that Mrs. Campbell vandalized my property. She's been harassing me for weeks. I'm not giving her access to my pool." The room went silent. I pulled out my phone and played the security footage. Karen sneaking into my yard, dumping buckets of motor oil into my pool, smashing my gate. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Even Mr. Thompson's face darkened. "Is this true, Mrs. Campbell?" he demanded. Karen's smile faltered, but she quickly recovered. "I was just cleaning up some debris," she stammered. I scoffed. At 2 a.m., with motor oil, the tide was turning against her. Mr. Thompson sighed heavily. "This behavior is unacceptable. We cannot allow vandalism under any circumstances." He glanced at me. "We'll hold a vote. If the majority agrees, we'll dismiss her complaint entirely." Karen's face twisted with rage. You can't do this. But the vote wasn't even close. I won by a landslide. For a brief moment, I thought it was over. I was wrong. The next morning, I woke to chaos. Dozens of cars clogged my street, and a news van parked in front of my house. I barely had time to grab a coffee before my phone buzzed with a notification. Karen had taken things public. A viral social media post showed a picture of my pool with the caption, "Wealthy neighbor refuses to share his pool while local kids suffer in the heat. Is this the kind of community we want?" The post had thousands of shares, and the local news wanted an interview. I was furious. She wasn't just trying to win with the HOA. She was trying to destroy my reputation. But I wasn't backing down. I called Mr. Harris. "She's crossed the line," I snapped. "Let's hit her with everything we've got." 2 hours later, Karen received the official lawsuit. I was suing her for vandalism, trespassing, harassment, and defamation. I watched from my window as a courier handed her the papers. Her face turned pale as she read the charges. For the first time, she looked scared. I had proof. I had witnesses. And now, I had the law on my side. But the war wasn't over yet. Because Karen? She still had one last trick up her sleeve. I thought the lawsuit would finally shut her down, but I underestimated just how far Karen would go. 3 days after she got served, I stepped outside to grab my morning paper, only to find a massive inflatable water slide sitting smack dab in the middle of my driveway. A laminated sign hung from it. "Community Water Park. All are welcome." I blinked. Was this woman serious? Before I could process it, a mob of kids came running up, dragging towels and inner tubes. Behind them, Karen stood proudly, arms crossed like she had just won the war. "Morning," she called out sweetly. "Since you're so against sharing your pool, I thought I'd bring the fun to the whole block." I clenched my fists. She was trying to humiliate me. A camera crew, the same news station that ran her pity story, stood on the curb filming everything. She wanted public spectacle. I wasn't playing along. I marched toward her, keeping my voice low. "Move this. Now, or I'll have it hauled away." Karen laughed. "Relax, neighbor. It's not on your property. Technically, it's on the public sidewalk. And you wouldn't want to be the guy who ruins a fun day for the kids, would you?" I gritted my teeth. She was right. It wasn't on my land. And worse, the crowd loved her. Parents smiled and clapped as kids splashed down the slide, shrieking with joy. The news crew recorded every moment, spinning me as the villain while Karen played the generous neighborhood mom. But I wasn't going to let her win. I called my lawyer again. "She's staging a public stunt," I growled. "Can we stop her?" Mr. Harris didn't miss a beat. "If it's on public property, call the city. It's an unauthorized structure. They'll shut her down faster than you can blink." Perfect. I hung up and dialed the city's public works department. Within an hour, a white city truck rolled up. A stern-looking official stepped out and inspected the massive water slide. I crossed my arms and waited as Karen pranced over, pretending to be innocent. "Is there a problem?" she asked sweetly. The city worker pulled out a clipboard. "You didn't apply for a public event permit. This structure is blocking a public walkway. It's a violation of city code." Karen's smile vanished. "But it's just for the neighborhood kids," she protested. He shook his head. "I don't care if it's a carnival. You have 1 hour to take it down, or we'll remove it and fine you for every hour it's up." I swear I saw steam coming out of Karen's ears. The best part? The news crew caught everything on camera. Karen's public stunt blew up in her face, and I wasn't done yet. The day after the water slide fiasco, Mr. Harris called with even better news. "We're proceeding with your lawsuit," he said. "But here's the kicker. Karen's social media stunt? It's textbook defamation. We're adding that to the charges." I grinned. That meant not only could I win damages for the vandalism, but now we were going after her for smearing my name. Karen didn't know it yet, but she was about to lose everything. The court date arrived faster than I expected. I walked into the courthouse with my head held high, armed with evidence. Karen, on the other hand, she looked like a wreck. When the judge called our case, I laid out everything. The security footage of Karen vandalizing my pool. The fake sign she posted. The news stunt that tried to turn the neighborhood against me. And best of all, I had statements from neighbors, people who once supported Karen, saying she lied to them and had a history of stirring up drama. When it was her turn to speak, Karen fumbled. She blamed stress, tried to play the victim, but the evidence was too strong. The judge didn't buy a word of it. In the end, I won. Karen was ordered to pay for all damages to my pool, plus legal fees, issue a public apology for defaming me, and the best part? A restraining order. She couldn't come within 100 feet of my property. I walked out of that courthouse free. Karen? She walked out broke and humiliated. Life after the trial felt like a dream. No more fake signs. No more trespassing. And best of all, no Karen. Word spread fast, and the neighborhood finally saw who the real villain was. Karen became a pariah, and eventually, she moved out, couldn't handle the shame. And my pool? It's still private, and trust me, no one dares to ask for access again. If you enjoy this story, please like and subscribe.